Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And this, I think, is a very important piece of legislation. It's a piece of legislation which is very close to me personally for a number of reasons. I have experience of close family members who have gone through periods of mental ill health, and some who are continuing to go through periods of mental ill health. So the issue is one which I have a very strong interest in. Aside from that, there's also the issue around the learning disability autistic spectrum disorder matter, and I'll perhaps touch on that first. There's often a feeling that in politics we seek to invent division where division does not exist. The reason for the amendment being rejected, I accept that the intention behind the amendment from Jackie Baillie and what it sought to do was broadly supported. Indeed, it was supported by these benches as well. It's why the Minister has committed repeatedly to undertaking the review. The reason why it was rejected from my perspective was that I felt that there were technical elements of it which I felt might have constrained the process at a later stage. I think one of the things which perhaps would be helpful, and I'm interested to know if the Minister might be open to this, is perhaps an early stakeholder event which could be wide-ranging and could look at, for example, terms of reference for the review and other matters to be considered. Might be an opportunity, I think, as an article of good faith for those on different sides of the chamber who have expressed some doubt as to the commitment of the Scottish Government. That might be a helpful approach to take, and I wonder if the Minister might perhaps deal with that in his closing remarks. I think in terms of the comments made by Jim Hume, I think one of the other difficulties that we often face in politics is that we overstate, I think, the situation as affects sections of society, sections of our health service. There is no doubt that there are pressures faced by mental health services. There are pressures faced by all of our health services. It is the nature of the health service that it will find itself facing pressures because it is a demand-led service. People will seek out support and help as they require it. The difficulty I have is that if we look back to prior to the SNP government coming in to being, if we look at the situation as it was then, there has been remarkable improvement in terms of how mental health is dealt with in terms of both the funding that is allocated towards mental health services, in terms of the driving down of waiting times in terms of mental health services. I don't disagree for one second that there is more to be done. Indeed, the Minister himself has said on repeated occasion that there is more to be done in terms of mental health waiting times. But I think anybody who was to look at the situation as inherited and where we have got to now would be hard-pressed, I think, not to say that there has been progress made in these areas. That's not to say that there isn't more to be done. That's why I think it's welcome that the Minister has, on more than one occasion, announced funding allocations specifically to drive improvement in terms of mental health services. But, funding isn't the only answer in all of this, Presiding Officer, and the funding to mental health services, while important, is focused often on dealing with problems as they have arisen. Now, we can't prevent all mental health conditions from arising because we know that the mental health can affect anybody in society at any time, but we can look at and see where in society do we see that there is perhaps more occurrences of certain mental health problems. Are they linked to perhaps some of the societal pressures that are being faced? In particular, Presiding Officer, one of the things that I would welcome the opportunity for us to look at, perhaps not in this Parliament, but perhaps elsewhere, is the pressures that are now facing our young people in society. Young people now face a great deal of pressures through their interactions with one another, through social media usage, and the impacts that that can have on young people's mental health, I think is something that merits further examination at some stage in the future. But I welcome this legislation and I hope it receives unanimous support at decision time.